In your study of the Gospel of John this week, you're going to come again to hear the messages of Jesus being the light of the world and Jesus being life. And you're going to see it illustrated in two very powerful and probably fairly familiar stories. Jesus talks in chapter 8 about being the light of the world. And then he goes on and he heals a man born blind. We studied this passage a few weeks ago, and we talked about how this man came to see the light of who Jesus was. Not only was his sight restored, spiritually he was restored, but at the same time we see those who were blind to the truth, the Pharisees and the religious leaders who couldn't see the truth that was right before them, couldn't see the truth of who Jesus was. Then we go into chapter 10 where it talks about Jesus, and we have two I am statements. I am the gate of the sheep, and I am the good shepherd. And the sheep know my voice, and they listen to the voice, and they heed what the shepherd says. Part of what Jesus is saying here in this passage is that when we are in connection with him, when we are in connection with God and all that God does for us, we begin to recognize and hear the voice of the Spirit within us. The more that we connect, the more familiar we get with it. You might think of walking in an airport or walking in a store and hearing a familiar voice and knowing, I know who that is. Jesus is saying that's what sheep are able to do. They recognize the voice of their shepherd. And those of us who are the followers of Jesus should recognize in Jesus his voice that speaks to us of life and of light and of the way of the world. And then after that, we come to a story that speaks about Jesus being the life of the world. And in that, we see the familiar story of Jesus and the resurrection of Lazarus. We again have talked about this story very recently. It's a story in which Jesus shows his power over death, and in which he is able to speak and share the life of God and tell others that I am the resurrection and the life. In your study this week, may God bless you as you see Jesus, the light of the world, the life of the world. May you be more deeply connected with him, who is our shepherd. May you learn to hear his voice and recognize his voice speaking within you and around you. May God bless you this week.